Hey everyone, and welcome back. Tonight we have one of the most explosive stories ever submitted by a viewer. This is Amelia Thorne's journey, a woman who spent 35 years as the compliant family matriarch, only to find out her own granddaughter and daughter called her too basic in a secret group text. Before we dive in, if you have your own unbelievable story of betrayal and triumph, we want to hear it. Send your confidential story to womenstoriess@zegmail.com. Now buckle up. This one's going to stay with you. The life of Amelia Thorne at 72 was defined by methodical order and a profound sense of self-reliance, a trait honed over years as a respected librarian. Her large, cozy kitchen was her retreat, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed Colombian coffee and the soft light of a spring morning. Her focus today was the final financial review for her eldest granddaughter, Juliana's extravagant upcoming bridal shower. Amelia was reviewing the invoice for the imported custom floral arch and the specialized catering, expenses she was meticulously covering from her late husband, Arthur's small pension fund, determined to give Juliana the dream event she'd been describing. Her smartphone, a model she kept functional but minimal, chimed on the counter with a message thread notification from Juliana's bridal party group chat. Amelia had been unintentionally included by the event planner, an error she had quietly allowed, enjoying the illusion of being in the loop. The first message, typed in rapid-fire succession by Juliana, 25, instantly shattered the morning's peace. Okay, logistics are solid. But guys, we seriously have to talk about Grandma. Can someone please ensure she doesn't show up in those hand-knitted cardigans or anything from a non-disclosed economy retail store? The aesthetic here is bespoke European, not retired. Amelia's hand, reaching for her coffee mug, stopped midair. Her heart didn't race. Instead, it contracted painfully, a cold, sharp shock. Retired. The word felt like a deliberate insult, summing up her whole existence as obsolete. A sharp, cruel reply immediately followed from Chloe, Juliana's closest sorority sister. LOL, I know exactly what you mean. She gives off that a non-disclosed TV show character vibe. A little too sweet, a little too loud, totally clashes with the a non-disclosed historic inelegance. It's an immersion breaker. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. She gripped the edge of the counter, waiting. Surely not from her own daughter. Then, the final, most wounding message appeared from her daughter, Denise, 48. It's honestly impossible, Jules. I'll handle it. We'll tell her the final venue safety regulations prohibit guests over a non-disclosed age. That's vague enough. She's so compliant. She won't fight it. Amelia slowly lowered her gaze back to the messages. The betrayal wasn't the content, which confirmed her deepest fear of being seen as a burden. It was the calculated, effortless lie Denise was ready to execute. Too compliant. She wouldn't fight it. They had relied on her decades of quiet submission. A strange, hollow smile stretched across Amelia's lips. She did not shed a single tear. The old, compliant woman was suddenly gone, replaced by a steely, unrecognized determination. Amelia sat motionless for several minutes, allowing the shock to drain away and the resolve to settle. She opened the group chat one last time. Wish you all the absolute best, dears. Hope your day is perfectly immersive. Then, she permanently deleted the chat from her phone. No more accidental inclusions. She immediately dialed the number for the non-disclosed historic inn, the location chosen for its European elegance, which she had paid for in full weeks ago. This is Amelia Thorne, she announced clearly when the event manager answered. I need to cancel the reservation for the Juliana Sterling bridal shower scheduled for June 14th, effective immediately. The manager, recognizing the prominent family name and the magnitude of the event, was instantly apologetic and flustered. Mrs. Thorne, please, is there any way we can modify the date? This is a premium booking. We don't often get such large cancellations so close to the date. There will be no modification, Amelia stated, her voice calm and firm, devoid of any emotional quiver. I require the full refund, as stipulated in the contract, minus the administrative fee. You may waive the cancellation fee if you wish. The manager offered to waive the cancellation fee. That's very kind. I already have a better use for the capital, Amelia replied, closing the transaction. Within the hour, she was at her local and non-disclosed bank name. She transferred the substantial refund, a sum equal to a significant portion of her retirement savings, into a special account she used for a very private passion, helping women in crisis. The custom, hand-painted party favors and the expensive imported silk she'd ordered were boxed up and labeled for donation to the local and non-disclosed community aid organization. She then wired the full monetary amount to the Havenwood Shelter for abused women and children, a place with no luxury or European aesthetic, only desperate need. Her anonymous note accompanying the large donation read simply, "For the women who are starting over. Don't let anyone ever tell you your worth is dependent on your appearance." On the morning of the intended bridal shower, Amelia, wearing comfortable cotton trousers and a sensible, non-branded jacket, drove to the vicinity of the historic inn. She parked her modest, a non-disclosed economy car down the road, taking a seat on a quiet public bench overlooking the main entrance. She was armed with a thermos of tea and her favorite library book. The day was sunny and picture-perfect, amplifying the spectacle of the disaster. Elegant cars began arriving, one after another, their passengers immaculately dressed in designer pastel attire. The atmosphere was initially one of joyous anticipation, quickly dissolving into bewilderment as the women found the grand entrance locked and the venue completely bare. The subsequent panic was cinematic. Phones were pressed to ears. Group huddles formed. Juliana, arriving last with a perfect smile and an elaborate updo, was the last to realize the devastation. Her face, visible even from the distance, went from radiant to furious crimson. "What is happening? Grandma paid for this. Where is she? Call her back." Juliana's voice, though muffled, carried the absolute shock of entitlement denied. Amelia watched for a long moment, the warmth of the sun contrasting sharply with the ice in her veins. She felt a profound, quiet peace. She stood up, brushed the crumbs from her trousers, and walked back to her car. She hadn't sought revenge. She had simply reclaimed control over her own resources and narrative. Later that week, the confrontation began. Denise called, her usual polished tone replaced by brittle frustration. "Mom, what was that stunt at the inn? The manager called me. They said you personally canceled the entire event." "I wouldn't know, Denise," Amelia replied, folding a sweater with deliberate, librarian-like precision. "I wasn't invited. And since I paid for the booking, it was mine to cancel, wasn't it?" The silence that followed was sharp and jagged. The realization that their compliant mother had just executed an unprecedented act of defiance began to settle. The storm had begun, and Amelia was ready to weather it. Following the canceled shower, a heavy, self-imposed silence descended upon Amelia's family. Denise and Juliana did not call back to apologize. Instead, the communication simply stopped, leaving a vacuum where obligatory politeness once resided. Amelia continued her quiet, organized life, but the atmosphere around her had fundamentally changed. The event, though initially private, had leaked into their social circles. The local chatter was sharp and divided. Amelia, known for her generosity, donating the Thanksgiving turkeys and volunteering at the non-disclosed community library, was suddenly the subject of intense gossip. She overheard snippets at the grocery store, the kind of whispering that stops abruptly when the subject turns the corner. Amelia Thorne? The kind widow? She ruined her own granddaughter's party. No one ever asked why she had suddenly retracted her gift. No one asked why she volunteered so much time, or why her name rarely appeared in their celebratory, non-disclosed social media platform posts, even when she was the one holding the camera. They only noticed when she pushed back. The quiet, giving woman was celebrated. The woman who asserted boundaries was the villain. Amelia found an unexpected comfort in the controversy. The discomfort she had caused was a sign that she was finally seen, even if through the distorted lens of local judgment. She realized the decade-long, slow erasure she had endured was not an accident. It was the cost of her quiet complicity. That same week, she began a new project. She bought a sleek, leather-bound journal, the kind that lay perfectly flat when opened, and began to write. She titled the first page, "The Record of Silence." Amelia began meticulously cataloging not just the events of the last few weeks, but the decades of slights and suppressed truths. The journaling became an act of excavation. She wrote about the first time her late husband, Arthur, had dismissed her emotional concerns, laughing it off with a condescending, "Don't be dramatic, Amy. You always make something out of nothing." She wrote about the countless anniversaries he forgot, which were later revealed to be deliberate oversights while he focused on his thriving, non-disclosed finance sector career. She recalled the sharp, specific pain of the night She found a crumpled, distinctively branded and non-disclosed luxury hotel keycard in the pocket of his bespoke suit jacket. When she confronted him, he merely repeated the phrase, demanding she stop her petty accusations. She had believed him, or at least pretended to keep the peace for Denise. She poured onto the pages the secrets she had held like fire in her own hands. The small lies, the growing emotional distance, the pervasive sense of being emotionally manipulated into a secondary role in her own marriage and family. She wrote about the moment she finally left him, years before his death, not with fury, but with cold resolve. She packed one single, a non-disclosed vintage luggage brand suitcase, leaving her simple wedding ring beside the bottle of his expensive cologne. He hadn't fought her then, either. He hadn't even looked up from his work. Each night, Amelia felt pieces of herself, the brave, articulate girl who once dreamed of becoming a university professor, returning. The act of writing was not about seeking revenge. It was about compiling evidence for herself, proving that her memories and her pain were real, not dramatic. She didn't know yet what the ultimate purpose of this journal would be, but she knew she was ready to stop playing the quiet role assigned to her. The knock came just after a misty sunset. Amelia, cautious, checked the peephole. It wasn't Martha, the neighbor who usually brought her famous blueberry cobbler when she sensed something was wrong. Standing on her porch, holding a dusty canvas backpack and a non-disclosed camera gear brand camera bag, was a young woman in her early 30s. Amelia opened the inner door only, keeping the screen locked. Yes? Mrs. Thorne? Amelia Thorne? The woman asked, her voice soft but certain, her wide eyes earnest. My name is Leah. I'm working on a documentary project about women like you. Amelia raised an eyebrow. Women like me? Leah, looking slightly flustered, adjusted her backpack. I mean, women over 60, who've been, well, erased by their families, by the system, by their own generosity. Women who gave and then were marginalized. I've been traveling the South collecting stories. Amelia's heart pounded, but she remained guarded. A woman at the Havenwood shelter in Charlotte gave me your name, Leah continued, desperation creeping into her voice. She said you were her lifeline. Said you saved her life, actually. Her name was Rosalind. Amelia's breath caught. Rosalind, a young mother who came to the shelter years ago, fleeing an abusive relationship. Amelia remembered holding her hand, telling her she was strong enough to start over. She hadn't heard from Rosalind since the young woman left the shelter to pursue a new life. Amelia slowly unlocked the screen door. Come in, Leah. Let's have some tea. They sat at Amelia's sturdy oak kitchen table, which bore the marks of 3 generations of family dinners. Leah didn't immediately turn on her recorder. She waited patiently, sipping her lemon tea, earning Amelia's trust through silence. Finally, Amelia leaned forward, ready to speak. Why are you really here, Leah? You knew my name, my full name. You didn't just get that from the shelter's records. Leah looked down, her fingers trembling against the teacup. I'm her daughter, Mrs. Thorne, she whispered, her voice cracking. Rosalind's daughter. You held me when I was a baby. I don't remember it, but my mother does. She said you gave her the strength to survive. I wanted to find you and say thank you. And I want to help you tell your story. Amelia felt a wave of profound emotion wash over her. She reached across the table and firmly clasped Leah's hand. You already are, sweetheart, Amelia whispered, tears finally blurring her vision. You already are. In the days that followed, Leah, Rosalind's daughter, and Amelia became inseparable collaborators. Leah stayed in the quiet guest room, turning Amelia's organized, predictable life into a dynamic documentary set. The kitchen, usually a place of solitary routine, became the primary interview location, the floral vinyl tablecloth, worn from decades of use, serving as a poignant backdrop. Leah was an intuitive interviewer. She didn't push. She simply created a safe space for Amelia to excavate the truth from the rubble of her memories. Tell me about the first time you realized the marriage wasn't what you thought, Leah prompted gently, her professional non-disclosed camera gear brand equipment silently recording in the corner. Amelia leaned back, her gaze distant. It started small. He'd come home late, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't his usual sandalwood. I'd ask, and he'd simply say, Executive meeting ran over, Amy. Stop being suspicious. I wasn't just his wife. I was his full-time editor. I edited his life story to make it sound perfect for everyone else, even for myself. She then recounted the night she found a non-disclosed luxury hotel keycard. She described the chilling casualness of her late husband, Arthur's denial, the way he could laugh and dismiss her pain as melodrama. I packed a single suitcase, Leah, and I left my wedding ring right there on his dressing table, beside his ridiculously expensive crystal decanter. I left 35 years of marriage without a slammed door or a raised voice, because I believed that if I was quiet enough, if I was compliant enough, I wouldn't be the cause of the scandal. Leah's eyes, watching through the camera lens, were often moist, but she never broke her professional demeanor. And he didn't stop you? No, Amelia said, shaking her head slowly. He didn't even notice. He was too busy being the successful man who built this perfect life. I was just the unseen foundation he could step over. The interviews did more than capture Amelia's story. They catalyzed her transformation, forcing her to confront her own years of self-silencing. One evening, after reviewing hours of digitized footage, photos of a young, vibrant Amelia slowly fading behind the shadows of Arthur's success, Leah came downstairs with a bold, radical idea. Mrs. Thorne, we have incredible footage, Leah said, her eyes shining with excitement. But for the climax of the film, the moment of your true reclamation, we need the family on camera. Amelia stared at her. You want me to confront them? Denise? Juliana? No, Leah countered, her voice firm. I want you to reclaim your voice on their stage. We host a dinner, a formal event. We tell them it's honoring the Thorne family legacy for the documentary. They will come for the cameras, for the vanity of the perceived honor. And then, you take the floor. Amelia felt the familiar tremor of fear, the old voice of self-doubt whispering about awkwardness and social rules. What if they laugh? What if they walk out? She remembered Denise's group text. She's so compliant, she won't fight it. They will twist it, Leah, Amelia warned. They always twist it. They can't twist the truth when it's documented, Leah promised. You don't need their permission to matter. You only need the courage to speak. Amelia took a deep, steadying breath. Let's do it, she finally agreed, the decision sounding loud and clear in the quiet kitchen. Let's call it the legacy dinner. Leah, efficient and dedicated, immediately began planning. She secured a beautiful, secluded private room at a non-disclosed historic inn, not the one that was canceled, and designed gold foil invitations. The ruse was flawless, a high-profile, exclusive film dinner to preserve the family's prestigious name. While Leah managed the meticulous social engineering of the dinner, Amelia focused on the final, most painful chapter of her journaling, the fate of the family farm. The farm, located in the rolling hills of a non-disclosed southern state, was where Amelia was born, where her mother had taught her the value of hard work, and where she held her most cherished childhood memories. Amelia's mother, before her death, had promised the farm would be hers. Amelia recounted finding a handwritten, dated letter from her mother, tucked into her favorite Bible after the funeral. Dear Amelia, I've changed my will. The farm is yours now. I know I should have done this years ago, but it's rightfully yours. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who sacrificed. Amelia had given that letter to Arthur to show his lawyer during their quiet, drawn-out separation proceedings. Arthur, then still a powerful figure, told her the letter was too vague, that it wouldn't hold up, and advised her not to fight her brother for the property. Believing him, she had dropped the claim, convinced she was merely avoiding family strife. While scanning old documents for the documentary, Leah discovered a financial anomaly. She decided to investigate further, making a covert trip to the county archives and the register of deeds in the farm's region. Leah returned late one night, her cheeks flushed, carrying a box of manila folders. Mrs. Thorne, Leah said, spreading the documents on the kitchen table. I found something. Your mother's original formal will, the one she was supposed to file before she passed. And look at this. She handed Amelia a certified copy of a legal filing from decades ago, a waiver of review that Arthur had signed, claiming the farm's original undisputed title was lost and proceeding with a default transfer of the property to Arthur's own corporate entity. He never submitted your mother's handwritten letter to the lawyer, Mrs. Thorne, Leah whispered, pointing to a discrepancy in the filing dates. He never submitted it. He lied to you, saying it wouldn't hold up, while legally burying the property claim. Legally, the farm should have been yours all along. He stole it with a signature and a lie. Amelia stared at the cold, hard proof of her husband's final, profound betrayal. The theft was not just of land, it was of her birthright, her history, and her mother's sacred trust. She stood up slowly, her quiet rage finally reaching a breaking point. "Call the best attorney you can find, Leah," Amelia commanded, the sound of her own voice ringing with unprecedented force. "We're bringing all of it into the light, every single lie." The night of the legacy dinner arrived with an air of calculated elegance. The private dining room at the non-disclosed historic inn was breathtaking, nestled beneath weeping willow trees and illuminated by soft, golden string lights. Amelia had specifically chosen the venue for its contrast. It was the epitome of the sophisticated image her family prized. Amelia stood near the long mahogany table, her heart thudding a steady, rhythmic drumbeat against her ribs. She was dressed meticulously in a tailored navy blue suit, a piece she had bought years ago for her retirement ceremony, a silent symbol of her return to professional self-possession. Leah, dressed in a sleek black blazer, was the picture of the professional producer, setting up the camera equipment in a discreet but visible corner. She gave Amelia a subtle nod. "This is your stage, Amelia." The guests began to arrive in expected waves. Denise, 48, Amelia's daughter, walked in first, radiating her usual corporate perfection. Pearl earrings, an expensive silk scarf, and a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Her husband, Greg, trailed behind her, immediately preoccupied with his phone. Juliana, 25, the bride-to-be, followed, laughing a bit too loudly with her fiancé, Evan. She looked radiant, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a designer dress that silently boasted wealth and youth. Juliana surveyed the room, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "Wait, this isn't the non-disclosed high-end restaurant?" Juliana asked, slightly bewildered by the private setup. "We rented this room privately for the documentary," Leah explained smoothly, stepping forward with professional charm. "A film dinner to honor the Thorne family matriarch and preserve the legacy. We needed complete privacy." "Oh, how simply lovely," Denise instantly gushed, slipping into her default hostess mode. "Well, we're honored, aren't we, Jules? Such a fitting tribute." The family settled around the long table, Amelia's 2 sons, a few cousins, and longtime friends, all polite, smiling, and completely unaware of the true purpose of the evening. The dinner progressed through the appetizer course. Wine flowed, conversation danced lightly on the surface, mostly revolving around the guests' careers and social plans. Denise repeatedly steered the conversation toward herself, subtly positioning her successful life for the benefit of Leah's rolling camera. Then, Leah gave Amelia the prearranged signal. Amelia took a deep breath, placed her linen napkin precisely on the table, and slowly stood up. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," Amelia began, her voice softer than she intended, but perfectly clear. "This means a great deal to me." The conversation at the table abruptly ceased. All eyes turned to her. "For years," Amelia continued, her voice gaining strength, "I have played a part in this family that I never auditioned for. I was the quiet provider, the one who cooked the holiday meals, the one who stayed behind and made sure the bills were paid and the non-disclosed car brand was serviced." She paused, looking slowly around the table, meeting each gaze. "But I was also the one forgotten, the one sidelined, the one discarded. And lately, I've been asking myself, if a woman gives everything she has to the people she loves and they no longer remember who she is, did she ever really exist to them at all?" Denise chuckled nervously, attempting to dissolve the tension with a familiar condescending tone. "Mom, what are you talking about? It's a celebration." "I'm talking about the bridal shower, Denise," Amelia said, turning to her. "The one I paid for." She turned her gaze to Juliana. "I spared no expense. I wanted it to be perfect for you, Juliana. And in return, I was called suburban, awkward, and someone to be excluded and lied to." Juliana visibly stiffened, her cheeks turning a painful shade of crimson. "Grandma, that was a private message. You weren't supposed to see it," she pleaded quickly. "But it wasn't private to me," Amelia countered, her voice unwavering. "I read every word, and I canceled the shower. Not out of spite, Juliana. I canceled it out of clarity. For the first time, I saw how irrelevant I had become to my own family." The silence in the room was suffocating. One of Amelia's sons cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'm sure she didn't mean it that way, Mom." "Didn't mean it?" Amelia pressed, the fire now truly ignited. What about the years your father cheated on me and I kept the family together? What about the holidays you left me alone because your wives didn't approve of my cooking? What about the time I had surgery and no one called to check on me for 5 days? The veneer of the perfect family shattered like glass. Amelia decided to deliver the final, undeniable proof. She nodded to Leah. Leah retrieved a manila envelope from her camera bag. In here, Amelia said, indicating the folder, are copies of the journal entries and letters I wrote to your father during our separation. The ones where I begged him not to turn you against me. The ones where I warned him what his continuous emotional absence would do to our children. Amelia then reached into her own handbag and pulled out a separate folder. And here are the archived photos and copies of the bank statements. Evidence of the emotional and financial cost I survived while maintaining the facade for you all. Juliana was openly weeping now, her perfect makeup dissolving. Denise looked pale, like she might faint, her eyes darting between the camera and her mother. I didn't invite you here to destroy you, Amelia said gently, her anger having cooled into a sad, dignified truth. I invited you here to free myself. She sat down. Her hands were shaking, but she felt incredibly light, as if she had finally set down a burden she had carried for 50 years. The dinner was over. No one spoke a word until Leah quietly turned off the camera. Then, Juliana rose from the table. Her voice was soft and broken. I didn't know, Grandma. I honestly didn't know. I know you didn't, Amelia replied. But now you do. The guests left in subdued silence. Denise and her husband were among the first to walk out, their faces hard with shame and fury. They did not kiss her cheek. They simply left. Leah helped Amelia gather her things. You were incredible, Mrs. Thorne, Leah whispered, her eyes glossy. I was honest, Amelia corrected, a tired, genuine smile touching her lips. She knew the social fallout would be immense, but she was no longer afraid of the storm. She was ready for the next chapter. Amelia woke the morning after the legacy dinner to a heavy, dull ache behind her eyes. Not the ache of regret, but of emotional exhaustion. The silence in her house was profound, a vacuum created by the sudden, explosive departure of decades of suppressed truth. The first sound to pierce the quiet was the insistent, sharp ring of her landline. The caller ID displayed Denise's name, flashing on the screen like an emergency warning. Amelia instinctively let it ring twice, then 3 times, reclaiming the power of the deliberate pause. Finally, she picked up. Hello, Denise? Amelia's voice was low, steady, and utterly devoid of its usual maternal warmth. Mom, Denise began, her voice brittle and strained, stripped of its usual corporate polish. We need to talk about that performance last night, that absolutely appalling stunt you pulled. Amelia slowly sat up in bed, easing her back against the cool headboard. You mean the truth? I mean the humiliation you inflicted on us, Denise spat out, the fury barely contained. On camera. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family's reputation? To Juliana's wedding image? Amelia closed her eyes for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. What I've done, Denise, is stop playing your script. I didn't destroy this family. I simply stopped pretending it was perfect. The lie was the destruction. There was a long, painful pause on the line, followed by a soft, abrupt click. Denise had hung up. Amelia placed the phone back on the nightstand and stared out the window. The sky was an ominous gray. Rain was undoubtedly coming. But for the first time, Amelia felt a profound indifference to the impending storm. She wasn't afraid of it. She had just caused it. Later that day, Leah returned from a short trip into town, her cheeks flushed with the cold, carrying a briefcase overflowing with documents. I spent the morning with the legal team, Mrs. Thorne, Leah announced, setting the case on the dining table. They reviewed the county archives documents. They are ready to move. Leah pulled out a legal filing stamped with the seal of a non-disclosed jurisdiction. We filed the formal challenge to the estate transfer. We are contesting the deed for the farm. Amelia's heart pounded a furious rhythm against her ribs. The farm, her mother's sacred ground, the source of her earliest, happiest memories, was now the subject of cold, formal litigation. Our lawyer, a brilliant woman named Ms. Harrison, believes we have an airtight case, Leah continued, pointing to a column of text. Arthur's waiver of review to proceed with the title transfer was valid, but he actively suppressed the evidence of your mother's final intentions, the handwritten will. That constitutes fraudulent misrepresentation to avoid the probate process. Amelia took a deep, shaky breath, looking at the formal documents that represented 50 years of gaslighting and suppression. Arthur, even in death, had continued to cast a long, controlling shadow. "He made me feel small for decades, Leah," Amelia whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "He made me believe I didn't have the sense to fight for what was mine. He made me complicit in my own theft." "Well, he can't make you feel that way anymore," Leah said, her voice firm. "We are bringing it all into the light. This isn't just about land, Mrs. Thorne. This is about establishing legal proof that he lied to you and proving that you matter." "Call the lawyer," Amelia commanded, straightening her spine. "Let's begin." The process of the lawsuit began the same week, and the impact was immediate and explosive. The court filings, once public record, quickly found their way back to Dr. Arthur McCarthy's inner circles. The phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Denise. It was Dr. Charles Thorne, Amelia's ex-husband himself, something he hadn't done personally in over a decade. "Amelia," his voice crackled over the line, stripped of its former charm, replaced by thin, desperate anger. "Don't do this. Don't file this ridiculous challenge. It will embarrass the family." Amelia felt a cold, satisfying wave of calm wash over her. "The family I kept together while you were entertaining your secretaries? The family whose reputation you nearly ruined with your own financial indiscretions? I think the time for protecting the family image is over, Arthur. Think of the children, Amelia. Think of Juliana's wedding. This will drag our name through the mud," he snapped, reverting to the emotional blackmail that had always worked on her. "The children you actively turned against me during the separation? The children you allowed to mock me for my appearance and my cooking?" Amelia countered, her voice now hard as granite. "You stole my inheritance, Arthur. You made me feel like an insignificant fool for decades, and now I'm taking it back." His final words were a threat, a desperate gasp of his former authority. "You don't know what you're starting, Amelia. You will regret this." Amelia smiled, a genuine, powerful smile this time. "Oh, Arthur, I do know. For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm starting, and I won't regret establishing my own truth." She hung up first, the simple act a radical departure from the compliant wife she once was. The litigation had begun. The war for the truth was now public. The day of the court proceeding arrived, a bleak, cold morning that matched the solemn atmosphere inside the county courthouse. The courtroom itself was formal and intimidating, all hard marble and cold, imposing wood. Amelia was dressed in her navy suit, seated beside her attorney, Ms. Harrison, a fierce woman in her late 40s who specialized in family estate litigation. Leah sat directly behind them, her trusty camera equipment left discreetly outside, but her notepad open, capturing every detail. Across the room at the opposing counsel's table sat Dr. Charles Thorne. He looked visibly older, thinner, and meticulously put together, but the facade was brittle. He was no longer the charming, successful physician who had commanded the attention of the town, but simply a bitter man, fighting to preserve his pride and a stolen asset. To Amelia's surprise, her daughter Denise was seated in the front row of the gallery, arms folded tightly across her chest, a mask of grim fury and discomfort fixed on her face. Juliana, however, was conspicuously absent. The proceedings began with the usual cold, formal exchange of legal jargon. Ms. Harrison was merciless and efficient. She didn't dwell on emotional drama. She presented facts, the legal validity of the suppressed handwritten will, the specific timeline of Arthur's waiver of review, and the resulting fraudulent transfer of the farm's title to Arthur's corporate holdings. The heart of the case revolved around one simple fact. Arthur had been legally obligated to disclose the existence of any conflicting wills during the transfer process and had deliberately lied to his own wife and the courts by claiming the document was invalid. Ms. Harrison then called Amelia to the stand. Amelia walked to the witness box, placing her hand on the worn Bible, a symbol of the faith and trust that had been so profoundly abused. "Mrs. Thorne," Ms. Harrison began gently, "I hand you this document, a certified copy of your late mother's final letter regarding the farm. Can you please read the relevant portion aloud for the court?" Amelia took the letter, her hand trembling slightly as she held the relic of her mother's trust. She read clearly, "Dear Amelia, I've changed my will. The farm is yours now. It's rightfully yours. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who sacrificed." The judge, a man with a stern, tired face, read the document himself, his brow furrowing with obvious concern. He then looked directly at Amelia. Mrs. Thorne, based on the evidence presented, specifically your ex-husband's admitted knowledge of this document, do you believe your late mother intended this farm to be yours? And do you believe your ex-husband actively prevented that intention from being executed? This was the moment. Amelia didn't hesitate. She looked directly at the judge, then, for a brief, shattering moment, met the gaze of Arthur across the room, the man who had stolen her history. Your Honor, Amelia said, her voice resonant, carrying effortlessly through the silent courtroom. I don't just believe it, I know it. And I would have fought for it decades ago if I hadn't been systematically gaslit into thinking my thoughts didn't matter, that my evidence was invalid, and that I was too emotional to understand the law. She stood taller in the box, the full weight of her years of silence giving authority to her words. I spent 40 years being told I was dramatic or too compliant. But I do matter, Your Honor, and I am not invisible anymore. I am here to reclaim what was mine, legally, spiritually, and historically. A profound hush fell over the room. Even the clerk stopped writing. The judge, after a tense, silent deliberation, nodded slowly. He did not need to hear from Arthur. The evidence of fraudulent suppression of a known testamentary instrument was sufficient. Based on the undisputed facts of fraudulent misrepresentation and suppression of the final will, the judge declared, his voice cutting through the silence, I find in favor of the petitioner, Amelia Thorne. The previous title transfer is vacated, and the farm is to be vested in the name of Mrs. Thorne. The gavel fell. Thump. Just like that, it was over. The farm was hers. Leah squeezed Amelia's hand so tightly under the table that it almost hurt, a mix of laughter and tears bubbling up in her eyes. Outside the courtroom, a few local reporters, alerted by the sudden public filing involving Dr. Charles Thorne, waited. Amelia, guided by Leah, stopped for a single statement. I am not here to ruin reputations, Amelia stated, her spine straight and her head held high. I am here to reclaim mine, and to prove that when you silence a woman, you don't erase the truth. You only postpone its arrival. Amelia walked away with Leah. They left Arthur and Denise standing in the marble hall, their faces pale with shock and humiliation. Later that afternoon, back in Amelia's quiet kitchen, the phone rang. It was Juliana. She didn't sound angry or entitled. She sounded tentative, lost. Grandma, Juliana whispered. I just saw the news reports. Is it true? About Grandpa? And the farm? Amelia closed her eyes. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Yes, Juliana, she said gently. It's true. Now you know. The legal battle was won, but the true reclamation, the healing of the family, was just beginning. 2 weeks after the monumental court ruling, Amelia stood at the edge of her mother's old farm. The sun, though low, warmed the soft, thawing earth beneath her simple, worn boots. The sight of the property was bittersweet. The old farmhouse looked tired and neglected. Its shutters were askew, the exterior paint chipped, and tenacious weeds had claimed most of the once immaculate garden. Years of absentee ownership by Arthur's corporate entity had taken their toll. Yet, to Amelia, this was sacred ground. It was the heartbeat of her earliest memories, the scent of wild honeysuckle, the damp pine needles, or the vast open sky. It was where her father taught her to identify native birds, where her mother baked apple pie every non-disclosed summer holiday, and where she, as a girl, first realized the quiet strength of her own spirit. She walked the length of the long, winding driveway, remembering summers spent chasing fireflies and winters huddled by the old fireplace, while her mother read aloud from heavy, leather-bound books. She remembered the barn dances, the inevitable tears, and the fierce, protective love of her parents. As she surveyed the property line, touching the rough bark of an ancient oak tree, she felt a profound sense of wholeness she hadn't realized was missing for decades. The land was not just an asset. It was the final, tangible piece of her identity, thought lost, but now returned. I thought I'd lost my heartbeat again, Amelia whispered to the wind. But I breathed it in, and it's still here. Leah arrived the next morning, not with camera equipment, but with a notepad full of ideas and an unmistakable sparkle in her eyes. We have this incredible space, Mrs. Thorne, Leah began, spreading blueprints and sketches across the kitchen table. But it can't just be yours. It has to be a symbol, a remedy. Amelia was pouring coffee, watching the young woman with growing admiration. We could restore it, Leah continued, pointing to a sketch of the dilapidated house. Turn the house into a women's retreat center. Not just a shelter, but a healing space. Workshops, quiet rooms, safe, beautiful places where women like you, women like my mother Rosalind, can come to breathe and write their next chapter. Amelia, who had been content with just fixing the porch swing, was instantly captivated. A safe place. A fresh start. Not just for her, but for all the invisible women she'd met through her volunteer work. The ones whose stories were never told. The ones who were always someone's shadow. We can call it the Haven, Amelia suggested softly, a genuine smile forming. A place of refuge. Leah's eyes widened. And that huge oak tree out front, the one your mother used to tie ribbons on? We bring that tradition back. Each ribbon carries a name, a life touched, a victory claimed. We call the whole property the Ribbon House. Amelia put her hand firmly on Leah's. Let's do it. Let's make this property what it was always meant to be. A living testament to resilience. They started small that same week, gutting the interior, replacing cracked window panes, and scraping decades of neglect from the beautiful old trim. Neighbors and old friends, motivated by the public reclaiming of the land, pitched in. Martha from across the street brought tools instead of cobbler. The mayor even stopped by one afternoon, simply saying, "It's good to see this place come alive again, Amelia." Just as the old farmhouse began to shine with new paint and fresh purpose, the phone rang. It was Juliana. Her voice was shaky, quiet, and completely lacking its usual brittle confidence. "Grandma, can I come see you? Just you." Amelia paused, uncertain, but sensing the fragile sincerity. "Yes, darling, of course." Juliana showed up 2 days later. She was wearing simple jeans and a hoodie, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, not the flawlessly polished version of herself Amelia usually encountered. She was just a nervous young woman standing on the porch, on the very swing Amelia had been planning to fix. "Grandma," Juliana began, her eyes red-rimmed. I didn't understand what you carried. I was cruel, and I was entitled, and I am so deeply sorry." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She pulled a small, gold-painted frame from her pocket. Inside was a printed version of the infamous group text, the one where she called Amelia suburban. But beneath the glass, Juliana had used elegant script to write, "I was wrong. You're not suburban. You're the foundation, and I'm proud to be your granddaughter." Amelia's chest ached with a different kind of pain, the pain of forgiveness and release. She reached out and pulled her granddaughter into her arms. "Thank you, Juliana," Amelia whispered into her hair. "That means more than you know." Juliana stayed for days, helping with the cleanup, painting trim, and asking questions, real questions, about Amelia's life, her childhood, and the truth of the marriage. And Amelia told her, not as a victim, but as Amelia, the woman who had finally found her voice. One evening, standing by the old oak tree, Juliana looked at her grandmother. "I've been thinking, maybe I don't want the big glitzy wedding anymore. Maybe I just want this truth and a chance to do it right." Amelia simply took her hand. That night, Amelia found herself dancing alone in the newly repaired living room, the slow, sweet strains of a non-disclosed jazz singer's song playing softly from an old radio. At last, she was seen. At last, she was whole. At last, she was home. The morning of Juliana's wedding dawned with the sweet scent of freshly cut grass and magnolia blossoms blooming near the old porch. This was no cathedral wedding. There was no stuffy hall or rented ballroom. Instead, the Haven farm was bursting with life and renewal. Amelia and Leah had worked with Juliana and Evan to transform the space behind the old barn into a rustic garden chapel. It was draped simply with linen, wildflowers, and string lights, allowing the sunlight to stream through the ancient pecan trees, giving the space an air of profound natural blessing. The majestic oak tree, Amelia's mother's original ribbon tree, stood tall and proud at the end of the aisle, wrapped now in white silk and the weight of decades of family memories. Juliana had insisted on this location, a symbol of their shared desire to build a life on honesty, not appearances. Guests began to arrive around noon. Neighbors, old friends, and local folks curious to see the resurrected farm. The atmosphere was light, filled with genuine laughter, hugs, and the quiet sounds of an emerging community. Amelia stood at the edge of the porch, watching the scene unfold. Leah stood beside her, professional and non-disclosed camera gear brand equipment ready, wearing a smile filled with profound pride. "You ready for this, Mrs. Thorne?" Leah asked softly. Amelia nodded, her eyes glistening. "I've never been more ready, Leah. This isn't just a wedding, it's a recalibration." Just minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, a courier arrived. He handed Amelia a thin, handwritten envelope with no return address. Amelia took the envelope to a quiet corner of the porch and opened it slowly, instantly recognizing the crisp, deliberate handwriting of Dr. Charles Thorne, her ex-husband. The letter was short, stark, and utterly lacking in his usual pretense. "Eleanor, you were right. I never saw you for who you truly were. I only saw a version of you that I could control, and whose quiet presence served my narrative. When you stopped being that, I resented you. I know it's too late for forgiveness, but it is not too late for the truth. I am stepping away from the medical practice. I have sold my share, and enclosed is a check. It is not enough to cover the pain, the decades of invisibility, or the lie I built our life upon. It never will be. But it is something. It is the beginning of my reckoning. I have told the children the truth about the will and the farm. Do with it what you will. Charles." Folded inside was a check for a significant, undisclosed sum, representing his calculated share of the corporate profits he had accumulated during the years he stole from Amelia's estate. Amelia stared at the check, not at the amount, but at the word recognition. It wasn't justice, and certainly not revenge. It was the forced, bitter acknowledgement of his guilt. She didn't tell anyone. Not that day, not yet. She quietly slipped the letter and the check into her purse, tucking it inside her old Bible, right where her mother's will had once been hidden. Two women, both betrayed, both finding a profound, quiet form of redemption. The music began. Amelia took her seat at the front, her heart full of a complex mix of grief and gratitude. Then Juliana appeared at the top of the aisle. She wore no veil, was barefoot, and carried a simple bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked herself. She walked toward Evan, who waited with shaking hands and wide, emotional eyes. As Juliana walked past Amelia, she didn't look past her or around her. She looked directly at her, mouthed two simple, powerful words. "Thank you." Tears finally slipped down Amelia's cheeks. The couple exchanged vows they had written themselves, words heavy with the themes of trust, humility, and generational healing. Juliana spoke movingly about how the wounds we inherit do not have to define us, but they do demand our careful, loving attention. Then Juliana paused and spoke Amelia's name aloud for all to hear. "I dedicate this day, and the truth we build our future upon, to my grandmother, Amelia Thorne." She looked out at the assembled guests. "For showing me that dignity isn't about appearances, it's about truth, and that love doesn't come from perfection, it comes from courage." The crowd erupted into spontaneous applause, rising to their feet before the final kiss was even exchanged. After the ceremony, Leah handed Amelia a small envelope. "What's this?" Amelia asked. "It's from the non-disclosed film commission," Leah whispered, beaming. "They want to fund the full documentary project. They saw the early footage. They read the court documents, and they want to call it Basic No More, the story of Amelia Thorne." Amelia laughed through her tears, embracing Leah. She couldn't have written a better ending, because it wasn't an ending at all. It was the true beginning. That night, the farm truly came alive. Under a vast, star-dotted southern sky, the guests danced on the lawn near the barn. The air was filled with joyous music and the genuine, unforced laughter of people released from pretense. Amelia found herself dancing with Juliana, and later with Leah. The old jazz music playing from the speakers felt like a soundtrack to her soul's long-awaited freedom. Then Amelia noticed Denise. Her daughter was standing alone near the edge of the party lights, watching. She looked smaller, stripped of her corporate armor. As Amelia walked toward her, Denise met her halfway, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "Mom?" Denise whispered, her voice cracking. She didn't offer a kiss or a formal hug, but simply put her arms around Amelia and held tight. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see you sooner. I was so focused on being perfect, I became blind. They didn't talk about the lawsuits, the inheritance, or the canceled shower that night. They didn't need to. The truth was in the soil beneath their feet, in the music, and in the quiet, shared acknowledgement of their broken past. As the night faded and the last of the guests departed, Amelia sat in her mother's old rocking chair on the porch. She watched the final candles flicker out, listening to the soft sounds of the country night. 66 years, she thought. A lifetime of silence, but no more. She was Amelia Thorne, and she had finally, profoundly been heard. She knew the healing would take time, but the foundation was set. She turned toward the dark farmhouse, toward Leah, who was packing up her equipment with a tired, fulfilled smile. The life still unfolding was the one she had earned. 2 months later, the Haven farm, now officially nicknamed the Ribbon House, was buzzing with purposeful activity. Amelia and Juliana stood by the old oak tree, just as Amelia's mother had taught her decades ago. But this time, each ribbon they tied carried a new name, a new story, a woman they had helped. There was Angela, who arrived from 3 towns over, escaping a partner who had systematically destroyed her confidence. There was Margot, 68, who, after years of being told she wasn't smart enough by her late husband, was finally learning to drive. There was Jenny, 24, whose conservative family had cast her out for speaking her truth. They came to the farm with nothing but stories and deep wounds, and they left with something immeasurably valuable, dignity and a sense of self-worth. The farm had quickly grown beyond the old house. Juliana helped with grant applications, using her newfound focus and determination to secure funding. Leah handled the outreach, ensuring the stories of the residents were treated with respect and privacy. Amelia's favorite spot was a circular room they had built off the main house, which they called the voice room. It was a space where women could sit, share, and finally utter the things they had never dared say aloud before. One afternoon, while planting lavender near the porch, Juliana turned to Amelia and asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently, Grandma? That you had never had to go through all that pain?" Amelia looked out over the fields, now golden in the late afternoon sun. "I used to, darling. But if things had gone perfectly, I might never have found my voice, and you might never have found yours." Juliana nodded slowly, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm proud to be your granddaughter." "And I," Amelia said, squeezing her hand, "am proud to be your legacy." That night, Amelia found Leah sitting under the oak tree, her laptop open, staring up at the moon. She looked peaceful, tired, and profoundly fulfilled. "They accepted the documentary into the non-disclosed prestigious film festival," Leah said softly, without looking up. "We're going, Mrs. Thorne. All of us. You, me, and Juliana." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't about the prestige, it was about the reach. Her story, their story, was going to travel far beyond these fields, beyond the local gossip and the social circles of her daughter. It was going to reach women still sitting in silence, women who still believed they were too old, too plain, or too broken to rise. "They want to call it Basic No More," Leah confirmed, turning to her with a wide grin. "The story of Amelia Thorne." "They're going to hear your voice, Amelia," Leah whispered. Amelia reached for Leah's hand, feeling the powerful bond forged through shared truth. "They're going to hear yours too, Leah. And Rosalind's." On the morning of the premiere, Amelia stood before a mirror in a modest hotel room in a non-disclosed Western city. She wore a sophisticated navy blue suit, pearls inherited from her mother's jewelry box, and a heart filled with every version of herself she had ever been. Young, scared, silenced, and finally free. They walked the red carpet as a trio. Leah, Juliana, and Amelia. Cameras flashed, people clapped. But all Amelia could think about were the ribbons swaying back home, carrying the names of women who had finally found their way to the light. The theater was packed for the premiere of Basic No More, The Story of Amelia Thorne, at the non-disclosed prestigious film festival. Amelia sat in the audience between Juliana and Leah, feeling both exposed and profoundly protected. The film played out, showcasing Amelia's life. The vibrant young woman, the quiet endurance of the marriage, the crushing dismissal of the group text, the cold fury of the cancellation, the quiet resolve in the courtroom, and the birth of the Ribbon House. Leah's cinematic eye captured not just the facts, but the immense emotional weight Amelia had carried. There were tears, bursts of applause, and a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. But the moment that solidified the film's impact came during the post-screening Q&A session. An older woman with silver hair and trembling hands stood up from the back row. She was dressed simply, looking deeply moved. "I haven't spoken to my own daughter in 20 years, the woman said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I saw myself in your story, Mrs. Thorne, the invisibility, the resentment. But tonight, I think I will call her. I think I finally have the courage to speak my truth." Amelia met the woman's eyes across the auditorium, and she knew. This was the reason. This was the miracle born from years of heartache and one act of radical defiance. This was redemption spreading far beyond her immediate family. The success was immediate. Media coverage was extensive, focusing on Amelia's courage and the power of finding one's voice late in life. Amelia handled the spotlight with grace, always redirecting the attention back to the mission of the Haven. Upon returning to the farm, Amelia found a beautiful letter waiting for her on the porch swing. It was placed beneath a single, freshly bloomed white rose. The letter had no signature, only 6 words in delicate, familiar handwriting that she instantly recognized as her daughter, Denise's. "I see you now. I am sorry." Amelia pressed the letter to her chest, smiling through her tears. She was no longer waiting to be seen. She had already become the powerful, visible woman she needed to be. But the simple, unsolicited recognition from her child was the final, soft closure she hadn't realized she was still waiting for. She walked straight to the old oak tree. She took out a new ribbon, bright red, the color of fire, courage, and rebirth. She carefully tied it to a strong, low-hanging branch right next to the ribbon Juliana had tied. On this ribbon, she wrote, "Amelia Thorne, survivor, matriarch, free." Then she turned toward the house, toward the sound of laughter spilling out from the renovated living room, toward the life still unfolding, and she walked forward, finally whole, finally heard, finally home. 1 year later, the Haven farm buzzed with life and purpose. Children chased chickens in the yard. Women laughed around the newly built fire pit. From the porch, the sounds of old gospel hymns and jazz spilled out onto the wind. The Ribbon House had grown into a true sanctuary. Local volunteers had helped build 4 small, beautiful cabins on the property, creating private spaces for the residents. There was a greenhouse, a craft barn, and the voice room, always occupied by women sharing stories and breaking long silences. Amelia had never seen so many broken pieces turn into something so whole. Juliana and Evan were expecting their first child and were frequent visitors, often helping with the landscaping and grant applications. Leah was busy securing further funding for the documentary's educational release, turning the film into a teaching tool. And still, the quiet space in Amelia's life had one gap. Despite the wedding and the letter, Denise had not yet returned to the farm. Until one evening, as Amelia was locking up the community pantry, a familiar, well-maintained, a non-disclosed luxury SUV pulled slowly into the long driveway. Denise stepped out. No silk scarf, no excessive jewelry, just jeans, a simple jacket, and a look of vulnerability that Amelia hadn't seen in decades. She paused, taking in the land she had grown up on and almost forgotten, now vibrant and alive. "Hi, Mom," Denise said softly. Amelia's eyes were gentle. "Hi, Denise. Welcome home." Denise walked toward her mother, her hands trembling. "I've watched the documentary, I think 5 times now. I couldn't believe what I didn't see, what I refused to see." Amelia opened her arms, and Denise stepped into them. "You were a child, Denise," Amelia whispered into her hair. "But now you're here, and you belong here." The legacy of silence was finally broken, replaced by the enduring truth of a mother and daughter finding their way back to each other on the sacred ground of a stolen farm, now the Ribbon House, a place for all women to find their voice and finally be heard. What did you think of the ultimate confrontation at the legacy dinner? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, your story deserves to be heard. Don't let your truth stay buried. Send your confidential story of betrayal, courage, and triumph to womenstoriess@segmail.com. Like this video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.